Welcome, Highlander fans, to Bloody Kings, a Highlander podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. On this show, we cover everything from the Highlander universe. And on this episode, we're going to discuss Two of Hearts, the Fixening and What If. And we also have a very special guest for you. This is Bloody Kings Highlander Podcast, episode 172. My name is Kevin. I'm one of your Bloody King Highlander podcast hosts, but please welcome my co-host, Mr. Lee Phillingsness. What's going on, buddy?
Not much, sir. Just ready to talk some Highlander. It's going to be a good day.
That's right. Now, I kind of teased to you who we're having on. Are you excited?
I am. This is pretty cool. I got to say, this is why podcasts are fun.
So what we are doing, we're returning to the Fixening. Lee, this is something we've been kind of wanting to get back to. And for those of you that don't know what the Fixening episodes are, what we decided to do was look at the IMDb lowest rated Highlander episodes, pick some of them and discuss them and how we would fix them and maybe make them better if we were in charge. And we had a lot of fun with those, but we decided to do something fun with this particular episode of Two of Hearts. As everyone knows, the 6th season of Highlander TV series was kind of the let's audition the female character, let's throw them in their own standalone episode and see which one sticks type of thing, Lee. And so it was kind of a weird thing to happen. Duncan himself wasn't in a lot of this season. There was only 13 something episodes, but we decided to do, instead of just a fixening, we were going to do a what if, meaning like, what if this particular episode led off to the spinoff series? And I think that was kind of your idea, if I remember correctly, right, Lee?
Yeah, well, after the What If Marvel series, they kind of explored, like, okay, what if we went this way instead of that? It made it fun. And, when this was happening, we were all like, okay, who's going to be the spinoff, and it ended up being the one woman this entire season that didn't have her own episode, and Amanda. But they auditioned everybody, and they, I think this one was probably the biggest name that they brought in for this.
This is true. Now, before we go any further, we got to introduce our guest, and I'm really excited to introduce our special guest, the director of Two of Hearts and many other awesome Highlander episodes, Mr. Richard Martin himself. What's up, sir?
Oh, hi. That was for Facebook. Hey, how you doing?
Cool.
It's great to be here and to see you. I'm ready to be slagged.
No, we're going to have fun with this, but we're going to be bloody honest with you. And I mean, let me get right into this. So as I was talking with Lee, we borrowed this idea from a friend of mine who does a Star Trek series, and they decided to go to the IMDb lowest rated Star Trek episodes and talk about them and figure out how to make them better. So we decided to do that. We borrowed their idea and do it for Highlander episodes. And well, I don't know if you know this or not, Richard, but Two of Hearts happens to be the lowest rated IMDb episode. Does that surprise you?
I did not know that. And I'm a little surprised.
It must be a lot of people that ignored Bless the Child.
Which I don't know, but they, considering it became the spinoff, I'm a little surprised, but I think it's probably, it didn't have Adrian in it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the lowest rated episodes are Two of Hearts, The Zone, Bless the Child, Deadly Medicine, and See No Evil, at least at the time I did this research. And we were looking at doing Two of Hearts because of, well, it was the 6th season, obviously, but it was an interesting concept because the concept of it actually ended up becoming what the Raven was, where you had an immortal, woman with a mortal eventually boyfriend or partner in crime. And that's what you had in this episode. And what's interesting too is I was looking at your other episodes of Highlander, Richard. You've done 9. You did Valkyrie, which was 7.6, by the way. Duende is your highest rated one at 8.0. And then you had, which I'm not surprised because everyone loves that one. Stone of Scone is right behind it at 7.9. Armageddon. What's that?
Roger Daltrey.
Roger Daltrey, yeah. Fun working with him on that one.
Brilliant.
And then you had, what was it after that one? Stone of Scone. You had Armageddon at 7.0. Diplomatic Immunity, which is also a season 6 episode, at 7.2.
Hmm.
Black Tower is at 6.8. This is all out of 10, by the way.
Right.
Justice was at 7.1. As I mentioned, Two of Hearts that we're talking about now is at 6.6, and then To Be is at 7.9. Now, what's interesting about the Highlander lowest rated episodes, when I was looking at those Star Trek ones from TNG, those were like at 3 and 4. So
Yeah,
I think in general, Highlander fans are more forgiving.
Bless you. No, there were, yeah, no, I anything below 5, and I'd start to, commit Harry, but it looks okay.
Well, we're going to be discussing Two of Hearts in a minute here, but I did want to give a shout out, Richard, because you have been so kind to when Andy Sloan does his Highlander location tours, Seacouver tours in Vancouver. You are always more than welcoming, and you show these people around to the places that you did, directing these locations. And when I went along in 2019, you were very, very welcoming, and I just wanted to thank you for doing that.
Oh, it's always fun. Unfortunately, like I only did one episode here, was Valkyrie and everything, and the rest were all in Paris. So the main location that you're showing was the Wise Hall, which was
Yeah.
a pretty major location for that show. And we had a boxing fight there, and we had a white supremacist rally there, and all kinds of, and a quickening out back, and where I famously told the story that I tried to burn down the building. But
That's a great story.
that's really some of the only real locations there. I mean, the rest, all the other 8 episodes were all in Paris.
Yeah, it's you've had some memorable episodes, as we mentioned before, and I'm sure some people are wondering, like, hey Lee, why do you guys have Richard Martin on and you're talking about Two of Hearts and not like Duende or Scone of Stuff? I mean, why aren't you talking about these guys? And I was telling Richard before we started recording, I find this a little more interesting.
Yeah, well, Two of Hearts was a fun episode. It was really kind of unique because Adrian was not involved in it, and so you didn't have the anchor of it, and so Claudia Christian had to become the anchor of the episode, which was interesting to deal with, right?
Yeah, and she was excellent in this, and I'm going to touch on that more. But before we go into the episode, oh, sorry, Lee. Sorry, did you say something, Lee? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Oh, and I was going to say, it's you. Oh yeah, I had. You can hear me. The double part of this is like you also are trying to anchor an entire mythology for a character that has heretofore never existed and is not a MacLeod. So we don't even have, just she literally exists in this reality, and so that was a hard step to take. And without a MacLeod, as much as we're going to rip into this episode, we got to respect that you had probably the toughest job in the series is this episode.
Yeah, it was it was a step out of every other episode I had done. So always Adrian was involved to some degree, and usually to the most degree. So,
well, before we get into the episode and maybe rip it apart and try to fix it and all that kind of stuff, we're going to go into Joe's, where we're going to talk about the Highlander reboot. All right. This is where we like to kind of hang out and chat a little bit, maybe catch up a little bit. Before we get into the Highlander reboot, Richard, tell the fans what you've been up to and what's going on with you.
With me personally, like I was might have mentioned, I just had a birthday 2 days ago, and I turned and so
41. Gotcha.
That's
yeah.
it. That's a good start. And just became a grandfather about 5 weeks ago, which is
congratulations,
a blessing, and all sorts of fun stuff. I'm also making some short films of my own, kind of more arts oriented and curating shows. And last year, some person got in touch with me they said a film, my first feature film called Matinee, not to be confused with the John Goodman Matinee. Ours came first. They want to start redistributing it in Europe.
Very cool.
So they took a print and took it to Munich and produced an incredible high def restored version of it, and they're going to start distributing it. And
are we going to get like a Blu-ray 4K release of it or something like that?
Yeah, it'll be available, probably some more streaming and that kind of thing. Okay. But and so it's kind of like as I said, there's no money in it, really. It's just basically I'm one teeny tiny baby step closer to having made a cult classic. And it's a tongue-in-cheek horror movie, basically, that takes on the conventions of the horror film and perverts them delightfully.
That's great. That is great. My wife is a horror movie expert, so I gotta let her know about that. So that's cool.
Yes.
You got anything else going on you want to let people know?
No, that's just like that. Okay. My short films and doing some screenings. That's what I'm doing.
Well, I just want to give Lee a shout out here. He's been in some movies, and he's got his own fight group called the Fight Monkeys. Lee, let us know real quick what this is.
I basically collected all of the fight choreographers and stunt people that I've worked with over the last 5-10 years here in Minnesota, and we've been working separately for a long time and realized like it's been piecemeal, and I just grabbed the people that I like, and we started working together professionally. We just booked a big feature this summer where we just did 5 hours of training with the main cast today, which is why I was sliding in sideways right at 8 o'clock. And we're talking, almost signed with production that'll be filming at the Warner Brothers lot in Los Angeles next winter. So, nice. But we came up with the Fight Monkeys. Somebody referred to me as that on set a few years ago, and I just love that. Anything that makes it a little bit less serious, I'm all for, as Kevin well knows. And this is our logo that my good friend Nick Kreckler came up with. We're trying to name him right now. My vote is for Furious George, but there's also Corky, Jimmy the Banana Man, but we're coming up with stuff. And then this is a poster for a short film that's premiering in 2 weeks from yesterday. So that's pretty fun. I was the fight choreographer and bad guy for that. If I'd known that I was going to be on the poster with so many pretty people, I would have made a much more different face, because
that's Lee in the upper.
Looking great, and I look like.
I see it.
Yep.
That's Lee in the upper left-hand corner. They're looking very menacing. So yeah, look at that. That's great. That's awesome, dude.
Great, good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I like.
Thank you, sir.
George.
Maybe I'll get to work with you one of these days.
Well, that'd be fun.
You like Furious George?
Furious George.
I like Furious George.
I'll let the group know.
Personal.
All right, sure. Let's get into the big Highlander news that is buzzing around fandom right now. And it starts off with Henry Cavill teases what is expected to be in Highlander reboot. You ain't seen nothing yet. This was published April 10th of 2024. Henry Cavill believes the upcoming Highlander reboot film will exceed expectations as he and director Chad Stahelski continue to develop the project. Speaking at the 2024 edition of CinemaCon, Cavill addressed the status of the Highlander film and what fans can expect from the fantasy action adventure reboot. The British actor promises audiences that they were in for a treat with the new Highlander movie, teasing its action and character depth and hinting it could exceed the original. Quote, I'm a lover of the original movies for better or for worse, but my goodness me, what are we doing with this? We are going deep into the meat of these characters and their trials and tribulations. If you saw me do sword work before, you ain't seen nothing yet, Cavill says. And the Highlander revival film will adapt parts of the TV show and return some elements from the original movie. Lionsgate moved forward with the fresh installment last October, and filming for the upcoming reboot is expected to begin later this year. Cavill is the only confirmed member of the cast for the reboot so far. Cavill has been teasing, quote, extraordinary changes to the Highlander reboot, insisting it will take the franchise to unprecedented depths. Meanwhile, Chad Stahelski, the director, has a big franchise plans for Highlander following a recent expansion deal spearheaded by Lionsgate, giving him full control over the property and the John Wick imprint across multimedia platforms, including a film and TV at the time of expansion. Chad Stahelski said, "I'm happy to also be launching another franchise with Highlander, a world that is so rich with engaging stories to be told." Now, I want to start with you on this, Richard, because there's some fans that are obviously split on this. But if you've seen what Chad Stahelski has done with the John Wick franchise, he did a really good job at world building, showcasing details of the world, good character development. That's what gives me hope. But you being kind of on the outside and you not kind of outside this bubble here, what is your first impression of this?
Well, first of all, he's great. I love the John Wick stuff. But it's dangerous territory, right? Because it's so established, it's so rich, it has so much history, all that kind of stuff that, anyone who's going to take that on, you got my support, buddy, because you're pushing it uphill, right? Because you really have to nail it in some kind of way. So it's not an easy. I'm sure this is preying on that guy's mind like you wouldn't believe right now. And how to make this iconic kind of situation relevant and better now and everything. I always remember a story I heard from Ken Gord, the wonderful producer I was privileged to work with, and he went to they had some sequel, I don't know which one it was, of Highlander movie, feature, and he was there with Bill Panzer, and at the end of it, Bill Panzer said to him, how you like it? And Ken never always says exactly what he feels. He said, the TV series is better. And Bill apparently waited a few beats and then said, yeah, you're right. So it's but you know what? Henry Cavill, great director, great. I hope it starts a whole new thing.
So, Lee, we haven't chatted about this since the new updates came, and now that it's actually confirmed and it's happening, what are your new thoughts now? I know we did a lot of speculation last year, but now we've got a little more information in these words from Henry. What do you think?
I think it's what Stahelski has been able to do really with the John Wick films and also with the spin-off series, The Continental. He's shown that he can do good world building and that he can also move away from the main characters and kind of do something. And I think in the world that we live in now, where we have a cinematic universe that has been more or less cohesive with Marvel, DC, Star Wars, all that kind of stuff, and a world where we have good short form television. Because, I mean, if you think about every season of Highlander, there's always 8 good episodes. Except maybe season 6. No offense. But there's always 8 good episodes, and then there's some filler episodes, and there's some fun episodes. But we don't always have, like a cohesive one to the end storyline. There's, Highlander kind of pioneered it with the B lines going through the B story going through all the seasons. But I think now in this age, this could be really big. It could be really well done because we've got the perfect formats for it, both big screen and little screen. And we've got the guy that can do it. I mean, I love the Continental. It was different, but still fit in the universe.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I don't know if you know this, Richard, but another film has been completed in the John Wick universe. It's called The Ballerina, and it stars Ana de Armas, who a lot of people know who she is. She was in a recent Bond film, and she's a rising star. And I believe it's based on the third film where there was the Angelica Houston's character, the Russian character that ran the ballerina thing. And it takes place between John Wick 3 and 4, because I hear that Keanu Reeves makes an appearance in it. But my point being, and kind of what you touched on, Lee, is that the world building aspect
Mhm.
The Continental was great because it took place in the 70s. It set up that Continental famous, assassins hotel. But
Mhm.
this is going to be interesting to see what else outside of the John Wick Keanu lead movie to see
Mhm.
how that world building goes. And
Mhm.
that gives me hope because I think it's going to be interesting. And I think that if anyone is going to be good at world building
Mhm.
and loves Highlander, I think that's a good cocktail mix right there. So it gives me
Uh,
hope.
I agree.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
all
And
right.
and it's got to
Well,
be
we
said,
got our
getting the action right.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously we know that the action in the John Wick films are a set of precedents, especially with weapons and swords, and
Yes.
seeing what they can do with sword work,
Mhm.
especially with dueling and in some flashbacks with
Mhm.
Chad Stahelski's stunt team,
Mhm.
that is even another level of excitement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's
If
go
they need
ahead
any
and
help
get
from the
on
Fight
ahead.
Monkeys, we're here.
Yeah, there you go. Call Lee.
There you
He
go.
knows some
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and head out of Joe's and let's get into the main part of the show. All right. We are Blood of Kings, Highlander podcast, episode 172. We are discussing Two of Hearts, and we're going to be doing a Highlander fixening on it and a little what if this was the actual spin-off series. Now, I briefed Richard ahead of time here. We do have some ground rules as a reminder, and Lee and I we kind of discussed this when we originally came up with the concept of the show. Was we wanted to be realistic about it,
Mhm.
and it's great to have Richard here because he's a guy that's been behind the camera, has had to deal with budgets, and time schedules and last minute changes on the set, and trying to make sure everything is run and done in a certain amount of time. So we tried to stick with those parameters to a certain degree.
Mhm.
And the ground rules are: let's try to be realistically about the change for the episode. Keep the budget and the shooting locations in mind. Don't try to make the production move to another country. Consider this kind of like a last second rewrite. Okay.
Mhm.
Try to incorporate the same actors and guest stars. You can remove an actor or maybe bring in one more in last minute because sometimes that happens. Incorporate the same setting, including the flashbacks. You can change the mortality of a character, like if you wanted to make one of the immortals mortal or vice versa.
Okay.
And try not to change the main actor's motives to what they do in the episode that may be considered out of character throughout the rest of the episode. Or in this case, if we had a bad episode with Adrian, which we have, make sure don't change something about him that's just out of
Mhm.
character. So does that sound cool? Is that something that you could work with, Richard?
Works for me.
All right, so let me go ahead and give a brief breakdown of the plot here, just in case for those of you that don't remember.
Mhm.
So, immortal Kate, together with her husband Nick, successfully free a kidnapped daughter of a mob boss. Just one of many missions for them. Nick is concerned when Kate breaks up their team to seek revenge on Bartholomew, who gets the drop on her in a parking lot. Nick happens along and saves her. He
Right.
suggests that they go after the money that Bartholomew is scamming on behalf of starving children before she kills him. They break into Bartholomew's headquarters, but the police who are watching Bartholomew are alerted and they are caught. The police are suspicious of the two because they carry weapons and numerous fake passports. A
Mm.
police inspector is escorting them out of the country when Bartholomew breaks in and kills the inspector.
All right.
On the run, they cash in a favor to get weapons. At Bartholomew's estate, Nick and Kate work together to arrange the showdown between Bartholomew and Kate, while Nick finds his ill-gotten fortune hidden as diamonds in a Bible. Now, that might not have been the original breakdown. I think I got that off IMDb or something like that, Richard. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, it reminded me of a few scenes that I forgot.
So I wanted to touch on Claudia Christian here because most people, of course, will know her from Babylon 5,
Mhm.
and she is the lead star in this. And I wanted to first of all get your first reactions to working with Claudia, because after rewatching this episode, she seems to give her all on this. What were your impressions of working with Claudia?
Uh, uh, she was great. She obviously knew something about the Highlander universe and everything. She came incredibly prepared. She knew that this was, none of us knew that this was going to be a spinoff. We just thought this was a thing because it was at the end of the schedule and Adrian had fulfilled his thing, and we were shooting this show, and we thought all the other what we used to call the Highlander Babe shows had basically been taken care of. So this was just kind of like a fun, not fun, but an interesting kind of sideshow to have with this thing. So she was completely into it, and she's consummate professional actor, right? And she knew what the deal was, and she worked really well with Steve O'Shea, and so it was just fucking pleasure.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Lee, your thoughts on Claudia's performance?
Well, I'm looking at it from the stunt side. First, I really would have liked to have seen her maybe have more time with Braun, especially with the amount of time that she was having. She's doing some stuff that I see, and Braun had 4 days, most likely, to get the fight choreography in.
Mhm.
And in those 4 days, she was probably doing other stuff. But headlining a series, being the hero of the show, as I tell every actor I train, this is not something I expect people to be able to do. This is why you bring in a guy like me. Her accent surprised me. I didn't remember it being as good the first time around, but it was just right. It was subtle enough that it was not big and overly Irish, but it also wasn't too small and kind of like fake. It's set just right, I think, there. Then I was going to say, boy, she can run pretty quiet in those big, heavy boots. When she's running up those stairs, boy, I know I make a clomping sound when I'm in tennis shoes, but she was just like a little mouse. So you got to give her props for that.
Well,
or the sound guy.
It's true. If I just to pop in there for just a sec. It's true.
Go for it.
She didn't have a lot of time for it. The stunt, the fight sequences weren't very complicated. Thank goodness. Those swords were heavy. It was the same on Justice with Justina Vale, although she whacked the shit out of it. But it's it's a big deal, and it's all kind of more medieval kind of. They're big freaking swords, right? So she struggled a bit with that.
Gotcha. Well, what I wanted to mention is after these shows come out, a lot of the background of these characters get kind of fulfilled through either the Watcher database, or a lot of fan, fiction and stuff like that, and it gets in one way or another. And what's interesting about her character, and we take this as gospel as fans, because if it's in the Watchers, Chronicles or whatever, we believe it as what it is until someone tells us differently. And apparently, so her original name is Kasia of Samothrace. Aliases Kate Sutherland, Katrina Beliscalia, and Catherine. Born in 326 BC in Samothrace. Her first death was in it was 392 BC during a volcanic eruption. And that's how old she is. And what's interesting as her occupation is mercenary and model.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a lot more information, including the people that her Watchers and of course her mentors and stuff like that. But I just wanted to give a brief little backstory on her. But I wanted you, Richard, to kind of talk about the filming locations here. And I'm just going to tease this a little bit. You were very kind enough to send me copies of what you call dailies, rushes. And I have one of your episodes, which of course is the Two of Hearts one. And I'm going to go into this in a minute. But the reason why is because I want you to talk about the filming locations around France. What you remember of them?
Oh, first of all, they're all incredible. But for Two of Hearts, the main one we had which opens the show, is an old that was not being used, just decommissioned electrical plant on the outskirts of Paris
Right.
called EDF. I don't know. Anyway,
That was the first action scene that you see, right?
that's when they come through and they're trying to rescue the daughter of the mobster, right? And it's in this huge place, and it's been used in other Highlanders before because it just speaks Highlander and everything. But it was just an amazing. It's ginormous. It's like 3 football fields. It was amazing kind of place, and we shot there for a couple of days. Now, interesting note about that is that later, French film director Luc Besson took it
Yeah.
over. He took it
Oh,
over,
really?
and he built a studio out there, which has about 8 or 9 sound stages, and the rest of it is a film school.
Oh, wow.
And the director of photography of Two of Hearts, wonderful guy, Artu Tokay, ended up teaching at this place. And we went out there one day, and you could still see some relics of what it was because they tried to keep it. But it was just this enormous facility, and it's been put to good use, right? Because I think they were just basically given it, and then they had to develop it. The other location that was really interesting was the final scenes, and that's Pierrefonds, which is about an hour out of Paris. And
Is that like is that the castle area?
Castle, right?
Yeah.
Some Louis something or other castle and everything, and it's perfect. And we had to build in the little village down below as best we could with our budget and everything. It wasn't a huge budget, but we built in the thing, the whole village and everything, and used the castle too. Of course, it's been used in Highlander before. Most notably for me was we shot Stone of Scone there too.
Ah, okay.
So it's a place that we used a number of times, but it was it's a very beautiful place. So there was a lot of that, and then we contrasted that with some modern places, mostly from an area called La Défense, which is west, I think, of Paris, and it's a very modern area where we shot the bad guys, Bartholomew's offices, and all that kind of thing, right? So there
Very
were
cool.
a lot of very interesting, but we're all over Paris, mostly outside of Paris, because it's always easier to shoot outside of Paris.
Well, I got to say, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
your ability to make the EDF plant look like Chicago, it's tricky to do that. It's not something I thought of the first time I saw it because
Those are all French turbines in there, so I don't know how it worked it out, but
well, even like the exteriors, like if I lived in Paris for a long time, so like I watching it this time, I'm like, oh, that's obviously, it's more French in the construction, the doors, there's just like that accent that you can tell it's French, but like really for that first part, you can't really tell, and finding a location in France that looks like America is really tricky.
Yes, it is.
So it's really cool. I mean, shooting out on La Défense, for anybody that knows, like that's on the far edge of like the furthest metro. If you're like looking down the Champs-Élysées at the Arc de Triomphe, you can see this huge arch way out at the end, and it's this big technical thing. EMP designed it, and it's way out there, and it's really just a cool spot.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's there's a lot of good looks but finding Americana, you're right, harder than you think.
Well, and getting cars with the front license plate like that too. That was
that helps.
Well, I wanted to bring up the filming locations because I watched this the rush or the dailies of this one, and what's cool though about it's only about 35-40 minutes or so, and it's basically rough footage that you have, extended scenes of behind the scenes, and we hear you talking and saying cut, and then you see different cuts taken of certain scenes. And a lot of these were from the castle location, the flashback scenes. And what really stood out to me, Richard, was that the one powerful scene where you see Catherine's character killed, being shot in the back by an arrow right as she's getting ready to duel Bartholomew, and she's basically thrown on a mass grave of the villagers that are killed.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a camera that is basically fixed right above that, a long extended shot of that scene, where in the actual episode you're only seeing maybe 20 seconds where she revives and wakes up and then comes back scene. And so you get to see that, and then you see Claudia doing the scene where she sees everyone's dead. She finds the necklace and she's screaming and she's trying to bring her, she's trying to bring her back. But then you hear cut, and then boom, you hear, go again, and she gets right back into the emotions. And as people that are watching this episode, we don't see that. We just see it in one take. So it really gives you an idea on how good an actress she is and how she can just like turn it on like that.
Yeah. You in that situation, you say back to ones, which is the thing, and you go back to the beginning of the scene and you just start over. And sometimes that helps, motivate the scene to be stronger or take a little edge off it, that kind of thing. But she could. She's a very good actress.
And the other thing that I loved, and I was talking to you about it before we started recording, was the last scene zeroes in on her by the well, where she finds the necklace, and she's like, distraught. She's, and then it pans back, and you pop out of the well, and the rest of the crew is around you. And I found out that that's a very special moment for you.
That was the last shot I ever did on Highlander. And so we knew, and so I got the crew to everyone gather around, and we started in with on the Steadicam on her, and she just like overdo it to the max, basically. And she did that. And so I thought the editors in town in Vancouver would go looking and going, oh my fuck, what was he doing? And everything. But then we widen out, and it's just the crew sitting there, and the cinematographer saying, I don't have any light, and I'm saying, no, it's all wrong, and everything like that, and everyone just starts applauding. So it was my last shot. It was my last shot on Highlander. It was a very special day, and we just said, let's have some fun.
It was great. It really shows in that, and I just thought it was a special thing to see, because I don't think anyone else has seen that. It was not on any behind the scenes or anything like that. So, yeah,
it was just a lot of fun for the crew, and they're one of the best crews I've ever worked with in my life.
That's great. That's great. Now, before we get into the actual fixing and how we fix this, I did want to read a couple of. Yeah, we're gonna fix your episode here. We're gonna make it good.
To get flagged here.
Yeah, the studio has some notes here for you, Richard. And
yeah. Real late, but that's okay.
But we have what's called the Immortal Buzz, where we have our fans in Blood Kings. We have a couple comments, and I did want to read some of their comments. All right, so I have one from Roy Murray here, and this is very well thought out, because this is going to come up in the discussion. At least I'm going to make a couple of points on this. And Roy Murray said, I love this episode. I thought there was definitely something there to create a new series. Some people may hate the quote, but I love the hope, faith, and charity scene, where he says, this is hope, this is faith, and we're all at a charity. Great line. For a couple fighting crime and being challenged by other immortals, I'm inclined to say that the series would need to explore conflict between them. Nick, I feel, would have a hard time constantly being kept out of the loop on the well-being of Catherine and trying to protect her a great deal. Even if she didn't want it, the fight may lead to him just absolutely having enough and walking away. Catherine is certainly capable of handling it herself, but it's the lack of communication about who she is and the rules of the game that drives the couple apart. There's only so many times that you can do that. I feel that Nick would eventually try to take matters into his own hands and kill an immortal hunter style. How Catherine would deal with that would be intriguing. Maybe he joins the Watchers. Maybe he's already a Watcher and we just don't see the tattoo. Perhaps the Watchers find out about the relationship and put him before the tribunal. I wanted to bring that to your attention, Richard, because what this brings to my mind is when I was rewatching the episode, she's hiding stuff from him. And obviously we saw the relationship between Duncan and Tessa where he was a lot more open with her, but it seems like they're in the beginning portions of the relationship. How did that come across to you as you were directing the episode and seeing these characters work?
Well, it started as something that that needed to be, developed. I mean, it was, as you say, kind of the beginnings of that whole situation where she's got this life, the immortal life, and everything like that. And sometimes they can't cross. And she even says at one point, "Don't piss on things you don't understand." Okay,
Yeah,
that's kind of a thing.
great quote.
And yet she can't, she can't quite engage. And he even kind of goes into that, like, how did you ever think that I would be that kind of person, if you can't be this way? So it seemed to be, setting up something of a discovery path between them, right? But we were just kind of like dealing with it as a one-off, right? And at the end, how they solve it is, he just lets her do her thing, and then he comes out and it's whatever it was, sun, fun, rum. Let's just go back to being in love, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's basically all we could do with that at that point, But so I don't know. I was busy on other things, so I don't know the Raven episode. So I don't know if they ever addressed that, took it to the next level, and everything.
Gotcha.
So that's where we were at with that episode.
I did want to ask you this because a lot of fans feel that a spinoff, a couple of avenues for a spinoff that would have been interesting. One of the more obvious ones, Joshua Pillow said, "I don't know why they were shopping for the next spinoff when the answer was give Mythos a show." Did you ever hear rumblings of Mythos possibly getting his own thing?
I did. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
of course. I can, and you'll always be hearing those because you'd think that the natural idea would be Peter,
Right.
so charismatic, so everything like that and everything. I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to that because we all said, why not Peter, and everything. But maybe, I don't know, he was so involved with the whole Highlander thing and being that camaraderie with Adrian that maybe it just didn't seem right to them. I don't know, but
It's one of those mysteries. I think that they were set on probably a female lead. They wanted to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
And that's why they went this way with that. Lee, would you have liked to have seen something different than what they ended up doing with the Raven, like maybe a Mythos show type of thing?
I mean, the Mythos show really does give a much bigger slice of history. I absolutely love Amanda. I love Elizabeth, but the way that Amanda was written, she is like, she's a great character actor. She's a great character in this. I don't know that she has had the ability, as the character was written, to kind of anchor a series, because with the direction that they went, she became kind of a standard hero that occasionally, like, I want to steal something. But it wasn't really allowing her to do either one well enough. I think with Mythos, you've got a guy that's trying to survive, trying to stay out in a lot of ways, like Duncan was in the first couple episodes of the first season. He's been down a few different roads. And that could have been a bit more interesting. It could have anchored a series better. I think bringing Nick in on the show gave her sort of an anchor, but we don't know him. And he was the less interesting of the two people. So just she was fighting uphill the whole time because of how the character was. She spiced up Duncan's life, but you can't have, jalapenos for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it just, to me, like it's a hard sell on that one. Whereas Peter Wingfield has the charisma, but he's also laid back most of the time.
Mhm.
He's
Right.
sleazy, but not always. He's charming, but not
Okay.
always.
Mhm.
And you can have like that moment in chivalry, like I was born long before chivalry, and
Yeah.
doing that kind of stuff. You have a little bit different approach to it.
Well, you could have developed Mythos as a even more conflicted character than he was. I always remember, I didn't do the episode, but the line, or maybe it was. Anyway, maybe it wasn't he said, I killed a lot. I got good at it.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
and everything when part of the four horsemen or whatever. And that's a really kind of conflicting statement of this, kind of laid back guy who throws you a beer and everything like that, but he's killed so much, right? And everything.
Yeah.
So that could have been interesting, right?
Yeah.
Elizabeth, marvelous actor, and everything, but yeah. And the chemistry wasn't quite there with the new Nick.
Well, speaking of this, Nick, let's go ahead and get into the fixing of Two of Hearts. All right, this is the fixing, but we're also combining a what if. We're going to try to fix this, throw out some suggestions of what would have made this episode 2 of Hearts a little more compelling, and possibly the spinoff of these two characters. Now, obviously, they took the concept of your directed episode, Richard,
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
having a immortal and a mortal work together.
Mhm.
Did that surprise you that they decided to do it that way?
Completely, especially since I didn't get paid for it.
Yes.
Because
Mm.
if you're directing what is supposed to be what we would call a pilot, but anyway, I was young and foolish and just enjoying myself, so it was okay and getting paid well and everything. But you're actually supposed to what I say. You're doing what? That's enough. Anyway.
All right.
Mhm.
Let's get into the fixing part here. And I wanted to start off with an IMDb review that kind of echoes some stuff how I feel about this.
Okay.
And they give this episode a 6 out of 10. It says actress Claudia Christian was impressive as Immortal Catherine. It says, one, personally, I liked Immortal Catherine, and I wish that actress Claudia Christian could have been given more consideration as the main character of the Highlander spinoff series. She was a bit weak on the sword fighting skills, and Lee, you touched on that, but
Mhm.
those skills could have been improved during the spinoff. Two, I personally, now this is where I step in here and go, this is how I feel. This is my biggest contention with this episode, Richard. Personally, I did not like her mortal partner, Nick. Also, the immortal mortal team concept that serves to muddy the storylines. I didn't believe that viewers would tune in each week to see what Nick would be doing next, and I would have been tuned in to watch Catherine. Not only does her character have an interesting backstory, but she has a great looking immortal with a gorgeous head of hair, something we rarely saw in Amanda. Ironically, it was a team comprised of an immortal and immortal that ended up being chosen for the spinoff series, as we all know how long that spinoff series lasted. Aside from Nick and some careless blurting of statements made by Catherine, subtle statements about her immortality made in front of mortals, I like this episode. Also, Jack Ellis was great as evil immortal Bartholomew. So let me start off by my biggest contention with this is Jack O'Shea. I like him, but he did not jump off the screen for me. And I think part of it had to do with the writing. I felt like we needed more backstory of why these two are together. Not that they just have great sex in bed, which they obviously showcased, and they kind of have this Robin Hood, crime fighting thing going on where they didn't accept all the money from the gangster in the beginning, and they were about exposing the money, which is if you want to mess with a bad guy, go where the money is, and how they were able to mess with that. So I wanted to get your take on that, Richard, about how you felt Jack O'Shea's character was represented.
Oh, well, I love the guy. He's Milo O'Shea's son. He's a very soft British guy who put on the American accent and everything. But yeah, I think his character was just being developed in this kind of thing. It was a really brand new kind of situation for the Highlander thing, right? And well, they had it, with Duncan and Tessa, but this was a reversal of that, right? So it's hard to say. I mean, I think he was in a tough position for it, and he didn't have enough screen time because we had all the action and the Bartholomew part, which kind of
Right.
overwhelms it because Ellis was so perfectly evil.
He's one of the highlights of the show, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
At least I don't know what Lee thinks. But, what was one of your biggest problems? What would you have fixed?
Are you talking to me or are you talking to Richard?
Yeah, you, Lee. Yes.
Oh, well, first off, I would have a teenage boy look at the name because it's very easy to say two of farts, and you could have, or you could have like had it pay off with that jar of bolognese, like they have it at the end. They're like, oh, that's.
So you're saying you would have changed the name of the episode?
Yeah, I would have started there. There was, our Nick on this one. I do agree. He was a great actor. I didn't see him as kind of a romantic entanglement with her. They seemed like partners, really. It seemed to be a very professional relationship. I will say that she needs to understand consent because when they're in bed, he's saying, I give up. He's saying, uncle, and she keeps going. But if that was happening to me and it was Claudia Christian, I'd maybe be like, okay, all right, this time it's all right. But
hey, talk to the director. He was the one that didn't say cut. So.
Yeah. I just
I will say the one of the quick things that I was about to complain about that I love how you hung a lantern on it. Mission for Kids is the dumbest name for a charity ever, and I'm like, that is such a terrible name. I'm putting it in my notes, and then she goes, Mission for Kids, and I'm like, yes, all right, cool. So we know that it's bad.
Yeah. She saved that.
Yeah. I would also say the scene after they get away from the assassins in their apartment and they're in that I think they're underneath one of the train stations. It starts off, it would be so easy to rickroll in that because she's like, you know the rules, and so do I. And then he's like, look, I'm never gonna give you up. Like I'm with you to the end. Like you could have so rickrolled that scene. I mean, it was a rickroll before rickrolls existed. So
that is funny.
There it is.
I didn't think about that.
The two other things I noticed, and this is just because I'm a big weird gun guy. I would have used the guns that were in the back of that Deux Chevaux, and definitely use the Deux Chevaux. I love those old cars; those can take a beating. But the guns that were in the trunk of that were, shiny chrome plated, and then they're back to the Glocks when they go to the castle. Also, the shotgun that shoots through the window is not the shotgun that actually comes into the room. That was a sawed-off shotgun with a barrel longer than the chamber, and then he comes in with a 9-shot tactical. And the shotgun at the castle, just because I'm a gun guy, and I have to run this on set, was chambering an empty shotgun, so there was nothing being pumped into it. I do love. I would also go back, if you could go back to the garage scene.
Oh yes, this one here. Yes.
Yes. Allumer vos feux means it turn on your lights, but also light your fires. If he had lit his cigarette under that, like right after this, you punch in, you see him. You don't see him saying light your fires as he's lighting a cigarette. I mean, that would have been just a perfect. I don't know. I mean, you're in France, you get to do all the crazy shots, but I would have been like, oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yes. I noticed it. Well, that's why we shot there. I just thought, oh, that's kind of cool. But yeah.
Okay, cool. I love it. I'm glad that we had that wavelength. I'm always looking for the weird little things. But yeah, I love the apartment that they were in. I would have found a smarter cop, that's for sure. Because he's like, what? I'm not going.
Yeah. Yes. How did he not see that something was seriously wrong here and everything? Yeah. I loved how he whistled though during his interrogation. That was his invention. And I said,
There,
you're going to do that during the take, right? And
what,
everything.
it seems
Name.
it seems like one of the Highlander TV series tropes, especially the ones that are filmed in Paris or France. You don't really have the best policemen. You know, they seem kind of clueless. There's been a few that have been interesting, but yeah,
Yeah.
You just knew that guy was going to die.
Yeah. I think the smartest police guy was Jan Triska in Valkyrie. He could see what the fuck was going on and everything like that. But yeah, I haven't seen a lot of those. Oh, and one interesting little trivia note: when they buy those guns and everything with the deux chevaux, and I wanted them to put a carousel there, and like he's there. That is what's his first name? Anyway, he's a Picasso. He's the
You mean?
yeah, he's the grandson of Picasso.
Oh, Picasso.
Yeah.
Who is Jack O'Shea?
The guy who comes out and sells them the guns.
Oh, gotcha.
And he says, "Here, I've got a jug of my grandmother's bolognese sauce and everything." That is, I'm forgetting his first name, but it's like Pierre, Picasso or something, and he's actually Picasso.
So that's like the second Picasso shout out in Highlander.
There we go.
It's Olivier
Olivier Picasso.
Olivia. Okay.
Picasso.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Continue. Sorry, just a little.
No worries. So okay, so those are some good nitpicks there, Lee.
Yeah.
Other than Jack O'Shea's Nick character, I just wish I had no problem with the villain. I liked how he was portrayed. I liked how he was using religion to control people in the flashbacks and using fear that way. Because that was if you were an immortal, that was always a great thing to hide behind and to show power over others. And I thought that was the flashbacks I thought were actually really good. And
some of the
the
best
acting
costumes,
on
I
those,
think, ever.
yeah. And the long hair that she had too was just killing it. She looked really good. I guess if I had one other thing, it just would be I needed just a little more backstory to kind of care about their relationship. Obviously, they had some, when they rescued the girl, there's some funny stuff going on about, how to get out of the warehouse. And that obviously that you could tell they've been around for a while, but I just needed to care more about Nick a little bit and the relationship. And I know she was keeping him at arm's length, but I would have also liked her to open up a little bit more than just say, this is why I'm going to Paris and, all these details and stuff, because showing some vulnerability in that situation I would have liked to have seen then if Jack O'Shea's character of Nick would have drawn me in on how he would have reacted to that. Does that make sense, Richard?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. I mean, there's only so much you can do in an hour long, but yeah, it was brand new territory for the whole situation. And so much of it was about her and Bartholomew, that how do you make them connect more?
Yeah. Let me ask you, was there anything that you would have fixed? Like, is there something that kind of bugged you, or did it seem pretty good on the written script and you were just kind of, go at it? I mean, was there?
I couldn't think of, I mean, we did fix some stuff and we did bolster their backstory in performance and everything like that, where they're pissed off at each other and don't shut me out, all that kind of stuff. And we played that more and everything, but not in terms of changing the script too much.
Gotcha. Okay. Now we get into the fun part here. How could Two of Hearts been a Highlander spin-off series? Let's go ahead and get into that discussion. So, Richard, I'm going to start with you on this. Let's say the powers that be said, Richard, we really liked your episode here. We're going to use this as the spin-off series instead of kind of rip off the idea, not pay you. Let's say they came to you since you directed this episode, and and they came to you saying, we want this to be the spinoff thing, and we want you to direct the first episode of the series.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have liked to have seen, since you are now familiar with the characters, you're familiar with Claudia, you got to work with the crew, obviously in Paris or in and around France. And let's say it was the first episode was in France, maybe before they moved back to Canada. How would you have liked to have seen this take off with these characters in this setting as a spinoff? What changes would you have made?
The things that we talked about on set, which was basically, how these two ever ended up together, and why, and how, what is it between them? Basically, what we've been talking about, the backstory kind of situation, to really kind of supercharge that and see what that relationship was and meaningful, and how it was going to develop into them both, fighting, for truth, justice, in the American way or whatever, right? So that would have been my kind of concern right from the top, right? Also, it would have been hard to give up on Claudia and everything. Don't get me wrong, I adore Elizabeth, and I think she's a marvelous actress. But there is so many other things at play that, she's beloved in the Highlander thing. So they wanted to, put her up in it, right? So, but basically, it would been, really trying to nail down why these two are together,
Right.
and what it is they want to do. And that would be like almost like the first couple of first ep would have been flashback to their first meeting. Like, you could imagine the shot, sitting there and everything. What's your name? What do you do? Stuff like that, right? And start to move it from there, right? And then something happens, and she has to run off, and what the hell? And then boom, they clash on over something, right? So that to me would have been the way to go.
I like that.
Yeah.
Lee, did you have something you want to jump in on?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, watching this episode, that shot in front of the gate is so beautifully set. The symmetry of it is like, I mean, just gorgeous. Her finding the mark like that, understand the line. I mean, I'm always looking at the technical stuff, and this really is such a great shot. When she gets there and she turns and she does that walk, like, you start to believe the history of this character, and setting that kind of shot up. I mean, Wes Anderson's kind of made it popular and fun now, and it's almost kitschy, but it is.
I know.
Well, a beautiful shot in that.
The symmetry of it was really cool and everything, and that was the location. It was just like the whole, as so many places in France are just have these beautiful symmetrical kind of things.
Where was this location again, Richard?
I can't remember. I think it was a area called Nandy, but I'm not sure exactly because it was a while ago. And but this was the showdown, and here's the shot. Now walk into frame, and you come towards camera, and it's the showdown. And as soon as she enters that shot, this is it.
I got to tell you, and I've noticed this in your episodes, Richard, is that you really can get a great shot of these quickenings. And this was an excellent quickening, especially when after she's receiving the quickening. And when you watch the episode, you see the fire come down and come around in a circular around her. But what I really like about this quickening, and it was something I would have loved to have seen more in a spin-off series with her, and that's how I'm going to bring this back around here, is that she's like pushing her sword up, like she's welcoming the quickening, and like she's getting into the victory. Where a lot of quickenings you see by Duncan and other immortals, they're like being tortured to death, so to speak, where it feels like she's like, yeah. There's a scene where she does that. Did you notice that?
Yeah, well, she's vanquished him, and that's a good thing, right? But it's not like, when, like in Valkyrie, when Duncan gets it, where he's just killed one of his best friends, and it's tortured. and
Yeah.
everything. We went for tortured, but this was somewhere trying to do something in between that she's finished at the end of it. She's done, right?
Yeah.
But that one thing is just I did it. I vanquished this bastard, right? And everything. But yeah, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
It felt like she was just like, yeah.
Yeah,
And by the way, if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you check out the YouTube video because we're showing all these slides and it's a lot of fun. The one thing that really made the Highlander series really good is that it dived really deep into mythology. But one of the best things ever that happened to Highlander is the Watchers. And then you had the Hunters, the evil Watchers that killed immortals. And I would have liked to have seen a little tease with that in this series if this became the spinoff. Obviously, Horton had been killed, but I would have liked to have seen something with the Watchers, like having them tested. And I thought maybe a guest appearance by Jim Burns as Dawson coming in and maybe warning them, hey, something bad's happening with the Watchers, watch out, or something to kind of really make it interesting. And maybe even Mythos coming in, because we love the Joe and Mythos show, obviously. And when you have great previous characters to kind of come in to help launch the new series, that would have been really cool. And I was wondering what you thought of that idea with the whole Watchers and maybe an appearance by someone that we know and love that's not Adrian.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that. I don't know if they consciously steered away from that because they didn't know exactly where it was going, or because you think that the whole Watcher universe would be very concerned about this whole interaction between a mortal and an immortal, right? You think they would have something to say about it, or like that, and to walk into a place and in a dark place and everything like that, and there's Joe kind of looking up and saying, do you really know what you're doing here? Everything like
He's got it. He's got it.
That's the kind of thing you would expect, and I don't know if they went into that in the series, but that's what I would like to have seen. Is everyone, even the immortals, just basically questioning the situation? Do you really know what you're doing here?
I think would have been nice too, and Lee, I want to get your opinion of what would have helped this series spinoff, is have another immortal ally that she could bounce things off of, whether it's another girlfriend who maybe she mentored, and maybe a younger immortal, like maybe someone that she brought up that she's maybe helped mentor, like maybe in the 50s or the 60s. And one of the things that I always thought was kind of interesting, and I don't know if you noticed this, Richard, but when you look back at all of the flashback scenes that Duncan had, the one area that they don't spend a lot of time on is the 70s and 80s. Because in the 80s, he's kind of out of the game because he's hanging out probably, with a, young Tessa. But I think that might have been kind of fun. Maybe a fresher, I don't know, someone that she mentored or someone that she could connect with that, kind of show the ropes. What do you think?
Yeah, that's like that kind of thing. What do you think, Lee?
I think definitely. Like you said, the 70s and 80s were kind of a blank spot, especially with Paris and all over France. You can find the 70s in a lot of places. Even like when I was there in 2005, there's still plenty of 70s left. You can find it. And I'd also say that this wouldn't necessarily need to go back to Vancouver. This could have, gone over, like you're saying, she's from Samothrace. So this can go to Greece, and you can go to those ruins and you can rebuild that. It can go outside of, especially just a couple of years later, the Open Customs Union, I think it was 99 actually, opened up, and suddenly you could kind of cross borders without getting stamped and paying tolls. And production would have been a lot more interesting that way. You could have moved around with it a lot. And I think her relationship to either a student or instructor would really be telling. Just the It's science. To understand something, you have to take it out of its element and test it against something else. In this episode, we see her in her element. She's this bounty hunter model, which, God, that's cooler than my resume. I mean, come on.
It's hot.
Yeah.
It's really hot.
I also want to live in a world where a Gucci blouse costs $20 because that's what she took for the blouse. That would be so nice. The 90s were great, weren't they? But the 70s and 80s would have been great. You could also get like a lot of that ancient history, because she goes back to 392, which means that she was likely in the second edition of the Kama Sutra, because that came out in the 2nd and 3rd century. So up to 299.
She
so
modeled
about
for
100
it.
years
So.
after.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was the 2nd edition. So.
Yeah.
Like, and,
Was,
you know,
that,
I mean,
that,
yeah. How do you model for that? Like, or are you getting my good side hit? Like that's.
Hold on. So does the 2nd edition of Kama Sutra, does that have a higher print run, you think?
Probably. Well, I mean, the 2nd edition was like 1890 something. Richard Francis Burton put it out and translated it for Victorian English. So he took like a lot of the dirty discussion out. He just made it. Oh yes, when a gentleman has to do his business, the lady should, so it was very popular and very scandalous when he did. Sorry, I also an historian and literature major. So
I've seen that.
Okay.
But I mean, you could have that episode. That definitely gets some ratings.
Oh no! The
a
whole
flashback to
history-
the Kama Sutra making. Richard, would you volunteer to direct that one?
Yeah, I'm all in.
Hey, that's the name of the episode.
I'm all in.
Sorry.
Episode 3. No. The whole history of them, getting together, meeting someplace, and everything. Let me buy you this blouse that you're going to get shot in. Stuff like that. Like it's there's a lot of stuff there, and I don't know. I doubt it. I don't think they ever.
The fact that Nick was like, yeah, go ahead and shoot her. Oh, you don't? I will. Boom. The relationship has something interesting going on. If she's going to be okay with that, but be a little pissed at the blouse. So, yeah.
Maybe that's why he was okay when he said uncle and she kept going. Like, yeah, I kind of deserve this one.
Okay, I have to ask this question. This will be like probably the last big question here as we wrap this up for how we would how this episode could have been a spinoff. As we know, the first episode of the Highlander TV series, we had Christopher Lambert come in, kind of pass the torch in the gathering. We know Adrian was kind of done at the time. He wanted to move on and do other stuff, and we get that. But let's say you get a season or so in this, Richard. I think it would have been really cool to have Duncan kind of come in some manner where maybe his name is mentioned by Claudia's character, Catherine, because maybe they've met before, because he was in some other episodes where the immortal of the episode knew Duncan. I think Alex Draven's character knew Duncan, and he was in there briefly. How would you have liked to have seen Adrian come in and guest in an episode, and what would their relationship be if you had a say in that?
Okay, that's a very interesting point. You could go in so many different directions here.
They could be pissed off at each other.
That's where I would go first. Is that it was an uncomfortable kind of situation because she's done something or she's fucked up something or something like that, and it's kind of like, the Valkyrie situation where, are we going to be cool with this, or do we have to, settle things, right?
Right.
And everything, that would have been, because if you bring in, Adrian, if you were to bring in Adrian, it's just like, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. But no, it has to come in with, boom, like, they've got some business and some trouble. And and how's the boyfriend going to play in that?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like everything like that. Is he going to take it for her or something like that? So conflict would have been.
I love it. What about you, Lee? If Adrian came in for an episode, how would the relationship go in your mind?
I think it would be like that episode of Frasier where Sam shows up and you just kind of hold for applause as he walks in the door. And everyone's just like, okay, they stop clapping. How you doing? I think that bringing Adrian in, second or third episode, similar to the way that we brought Connor in the first episode, but more as a guide, more as kind of like a reminder, like this is part of this world. If it was this episode that they did it, it would be interesting if they kind of run into Adrian as he's like trying to I found this guy, he's trying to smuggle guns and weapons and cars and bolognese across borders, one of Adrian's little Boy Scout projects. And they're like, no, we need this. Like, we're going to do that. And he's like, okay, I guess I understand. And then at the end, he finds out that he doesn't agree with it, but then he finds out that the guy carved up this beautiful old Bible to put diamonds into a cup that is now in the Bible, that is now in the safe. It's like, okay, why'd the Bible get cut up? So now Adrian's kind of on his book salvation thing, and he goes back to his good buddy Joe, who runs bookshops.
Okay. I always thought there would be a fun for Adrian to come in. Where they would be at odds would be great if it was in a flashback, started in a flashback, because she's so much older than him. And I would love to have seen them have a flashback to where he's kind of a fresh new immortal, and he's cocky. He's stuck in his old ways, and she's been around the block for a while, and maybe something happened between either another immortal and she was forced to kill him, and something like that. I would love to have seen a backstory like that it goes back that far. And then maybe they came across each other, and they're not necessarily trying to hunt each other down, but I like the idea that he's always been into kind of the antiquities thing, and that she uncovered something that he wanted because it reminded him of something that was close to him, kind of like in Homeland and all that kind of stuff, where they're like robbing the graves or whatever it is. And it was that blackmail. I can't remember what it was.
No, that was Homeland.
Homeland, yeah.
They find Rebecca's bracelet.
Yeah, and that could have been like a secondary like flashback, and they've always kind of gone back and forth about the ethical way to run those things, maybe. I'm not saying I wouldn't have made them lovers. I don't think that I don't think they would have been attracted to each other. There would be something there that would push them apart, and thus, as you said, Richard, create that conflict in current time. That would have been fun. Yeah, what do you got, Lee?
They're fighting over who has the best long black coat. I gotta say, of all the other Highlander Babe episodes, she did the black coat the best.
She did.
It's like the right style. It's not just doesn't just look good. It fits the Highlander world.
It is.
I think as much as I really loved Alex Raven's wardrobe and all of the exploding water, this one really did feel like it belonged in the Lambert and Adrian Paul world.
Sweet.
Richard, any final thoughts on how you would have fixed this episode?
That's really hard to tell.
Does it surprise you that your episode?
I would have had an extra $1 million and shot for 8 more days, and the quickening that was that's the only way they could do it. It was supposed to be an infinity sign, and we couldn't quite get there. So we, because fire is tricky. Anyway, but mostly for mine, it's technical visual at this point, right? Everything.
Well, look at it this way. You can hang your hat on this. You have one of the highest rated episodes, which is Duende, but you also have, and then you have the lowest. So how do you feel about that? Is it do you hang your hat on that?
I wear both medals proudly. And also the funny thing is the fellow who ended up was Nick in the Raven series, this guy named Paul Johansson. That movie I mentioned that is being re-released,
Paul Johansson's in it?
Is in the movie. He's in the opening scene.
Wow, look at it. It all comes full circle.
He gets murdered in the opening scene and everything. And so it's kind of like, what are you going to do, right?
Wow.
Like the infinity thing. Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and let's wrap things up here. First off, Lee, any final questions for Richard?
I mean, this could go on for hours and hours. I mean, he directed Duende, and that's part of the reason why I'm on the podcast. I won a contest about, hey, talk about my favorite thing, and you and my predecessor Norm talked about Duende, and then we just kind of started talking. Norm went on actually to talk about another Claudia Christian show, Babylon 5, the Zocalo cast, and I took over his chair. And we've actually talked about Duende a few times, both in terms of the fights. When we had Anthony DeLongis on, I, of course, as a stunt guy, I had to talk to one of my heroes about that episode. We've done a lot on this, so I could talk about that forever. I mean, you directed Armageddon. Come on, man. I just got to say that one of the most amazing, just on television, just such a beautiful scene is the cop in the end of Valkyrie. Maybe if I give myself a little bit more every day, I can get some forgiveness. I mean, that was ripped out of Dashiell Hammett's just wet dreams. That was such a good shot, good delivery.
That's just good writing.
Yeah,
that's good writing. Yeah.
Well, and you gave it to us, man. I've been speaking as two guys that talk about this show, 170 some episodes. You gave us 9 of the best. So, well, 8 of the best and 2 of farts.
Thank you. Yeah. Hey, you gotta have the good with it. Anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we give it up to Richard for coming on and talking about his worst episode? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm bravery.
Yeah. Hey, we couldn't even get Clay on, so
yeah. Richard, let people know how they can reach out to you if they want to, and what you're up to.
RichardMartinFilm.com has stuff I'm up to and everything. If anyone wants to check it out, and one of these days, my first feature is going to be re-released somewhere, and which is very exciting. And but basically my website, RichardMartinFilm.com.
That's great. Lee, how can we find you, man?
Just look for me. I'm in a douche-veau right by an old carousel selling guns and bolognese sauce.
That's you.
That's me. Yeah, I'm Lee Picasso. Otherwise, you can find me on Facebook under my name, Lee Fillingsness, on Instagram at The Way of the Way. I've also got a Facebook page for the Fight Monkeys is coming up here soon. We just started up fightmonkeys.com. We're building that website. I got to talk to you about that because you're going to love one of the jokes that I'm putting in there, Kevin. And then, hopefully you'll be seeing a whole lot more movies and stuff that I got coming out. And yeah, do I do any other social medias? Somebody signed me up for a Snapchat, but I don't understand it. I'm old.
Well, I'm excited for you, man. Well, this is Bloody Kings on the Fandom Podcast Network. Of course, if you haven't already, make sure you check out our Facebook group, Bloody Kings Fandom Facebook group there. And you can find us on X and Instagram at Bloody Kings Pod. And you can email us at bloodykingspodcast@gmail.com. My name is Kevin. You can find me on X, Instagram, Threads, Letterboxd, and now Discord at Spartan_Phoenix. Richard, I want to thank you so much for coming on, especially on short notice, and also being a great sport about this. We could have had you on for Duende, but I'm like, nah, let's see if he'll come on for Two Hearts.
Yeah, we don't want to be nice to the man.
Let's do the shit show. Yeah, I get you. Well, thank you.
All right.
I greatly appreciate it. You guys are great. I always enjoy listening to your comments.
Appreciate it. Well, I'm Kevin on behalf of Lee and our very special guest, Richard Martin. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching and joining us next time here on the Fandom Podcast Network for another episode of Bloody Kings, a Highlander podcast. That sensation you are feeling is the quickening. We are one. We are immortals.
Farewell, shitheads.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.